Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact. We are all up in your face. It is time for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. We have a returning guest. It's been a while, man. 123 episodes, if you want to be specific, and I do. I'm known for my specificity. Yes, specificity is the word. Please, everyone, welcome back Mr. Phil Manley of Trans Am.
Thank you. Good to be back.
I think I'm often fond of saying that when you talk to don't talk to someone for a while that civilizations have risen and fell since then. I feel like civilizations have risen and fell in the past month and a half. So when it comes time to things being different than they used to be, I think we're kind of in overdrive here. I guess the best question I have for you right now is how are you dealing with this everything, global pandemic, quarantine, uprisings, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot to handle, man.
Yeah, it is. I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. I feel very lucky. I still have my job working at KQED as a broadcast engineer.
The mighty KQED.
Yeah, it's a public TV radio station in San Francisco.
They do good work.
I still have my studio in San Francisco. Although we're closed temporarily, we're taking steps to reopen, but that's called L Studio.
I think you were just getting the website together when last we talked,
right.
If I remember correctly. It was so it was
probably 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
It was emerging from the birthing canal as studios
right.
did.
Yes, that's a very dramatic image.
A little overly dramatic, perhaps, but yeah, I'll stand by it.
So that's been another thing. We're trying to upgrade and repair our HVAC system at the studio, so it would be safe to record there. But now, even since we decided we were going to do this, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago, now I'm having second thoughts about reopening, given what's happened lately.
Yeah.
Or what's happening lately. It's still happening. So, I mean, it's all so touch and go. It's it's hard to plan for anything right now.
Well, and it seems like things change on an almost hourly basis, right? I mean,
yeah.
I was even talking about, again, what seemed like years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, when it came to canceling tour dates. It seems like things just change hour by hour. And I was I remember thinking, oh, well, that'll change at least. So we'll know where we're at. And it's no, it's actually worse somehow. So that's exciting.
Yeah. My friend who's a booking agent, she's all I do is push tours into the future, indefinitely, they'll be okay, well, this is going to happen next year. Maybe.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully that's the we can live in hope. Yeah. Right.
There's no way to plan for it. Not right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if there's anything that's I don't know, not saving grace necessarily, but if there's anything with it that can be some small modicum of comfort, is that everybody's in the same boat, right? Everybody's dealing with the same complete sense of like resting state of anxiety and uncertainty, and there's nobody's got like one up on anybody else when it comes time to this stuff.
I guess unless someone's already had it.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you have the much vaunted immunity, in which case, who knows what that's even going to mean as it mutates and it moves on.
That's true.
I don't want to just. I mean, this isn't like the CDC podcast. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like dwell too much on this, but I feel like it's disingenuous not to bring it up. And one thing that's been so interesting about doing so many of these during quarantine is just kind of getting a handle for how folks are dealing with it, especially folks such as yourself with studios. I mean, for me, it kind of became real. It was like, oh, electrical audio's closed. Oh, Jesus. Okay, it's like,
I mean, I feel even luckier still, because not only do I have a studio in San Francisco, and I still have my job, but I also have a home studio in my house in Oakland.
Yeah,
and it doubles as my home office. So when I'm working from home, I have a place away from my children, so I don't have to work like in the living room or in the bedroom or something.
Right.
So that it's kind of an oasis, and I've really like spent a lot of time in this little. It's like a cottage behind our house. But recently, someone put rat poison out in our neighborhood, and some rat has crawled under this cottage and died. So it smells like death in my home studio now. That's
so not conducive to creativity at all. Like
no, I've been trying to burn a candle or incense. It's just like,
oh man.
Then it just smells like death with a candle. Like, it's gross. It's so gross. I have to open the windows.
It's like death with a hint of French vanilla.
Yeah, or like, Nag Champa death.
Nag Champa, which, hey man, depending on your feelings in Nag Champa, those might be one and the same, right?
Yeah.
So, well, that's a bummer, but it is. I mean, having like the dedicated space to do the thing, though. I mean, that's such a. It's the only thing I can think of is like when they say something's a mitzvah, right? It's like, oh, that's such a nice thing to have.
I feel really lucky.
So
definitely.
I mean, so what do you think? Do you think everyone's just going to be like writing songs and like preparing records and stuff, and there's just going to be this glut of records while at the same time all these bands are trying to like redo these tour dates that are like consolidated into like 1 3-month period? Like what do you think the end of this is going to be?
Okay, that's a really good question. And when all of this started, I had a lot of momentum. Like I was like, dude, I'm going to write my COVID record. And I'm just like, got my home studio really like dialed in. And I was trying to do like, not write a song a day, but like get into a rhythm. And I was making music more regularly than I had in a long time, at least as a solo thing at home. And then I think as time wore on, it just kind of faded away as the reality of like, this isn't going to end anytime soon.
Right. Like, this isn't like a pause for creativity. This is like a pause in like literally everything that we know. And that's,
that
hits different.
Yeah. It has, my creativity then has slowed down, but, I have taken on a couple projects, mixing some bands, where they've had records that have been in progress, and then they finally finished them, and then they were like, well, I need to mix them.
Right.
And that's really that's something easy I can do at home. And
rad or not.
Yeah. But and then also I play in another band now called Terry Gross.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I was definitely going to bring it up on my own because first of all, I think it's a fantastic band name. Secondly, I'm stoked that you're playing with Phil Becker because he's an amazing dude and an incredible drummer as well.
Oh yeah, he said to say hello. He said he's an old friend of yours.
I love Phil Becker to death. Played many a show with that guy back in the day. Remarkable talent on multiple levels.
Yes, I agree. Phil's a real gem.
Anyway,
and,
so
my friend.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean
So
to break your flow.
so
Yeah.
Phil Becker plays drums and Terry Gross, and our friend Donnie, who's also the co-studio owner with me, he's the bass player, and Donnie and I both sing. Anyway, we've been working on a record for a really long time, and it's finally finished, and we're finally going to put it out, and that's been something that we've been working on the details of through all this. Thrill Jockey is going to put it out, and I think it's coming out in November.
That's lovely news. That's not only lovely news, it's breaking news, which is doubly lovely because that means the show is.
Yes, that's the first public announcement right there.
Breaking news. Yeah. No, that's awesome because I haven't got to see you guys play, obviously, because I don't live in the Bay Area anymore. But
yeah, you moved. What gives? When did you leave?
Just about 3 years ago. Just a sheer cost of living thing. Yeah, I mean, well,
right, sure.
The internet kind of makes it seem like everyone is constantly hanging out in the same Zoom chat anyway, right? So
especially lately.
But yeah, and a lot of people, it's not like I'm put out a press release about it or anything necessarily. But that said, the idea with that was just cost of living.
So where do you live now?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Which,
oh, cool.
That's been interesting because I've been in the position of being the Wisconsin ambassador to my friends in California, but then also having to deal with the actual nonsense that's going on. Like people just, hey, we wish the pandemic away. Cool. Let's just do everything as if we as nothing's going on. It's like, yeah, that didn't happen. Like there's still a pandemic going on, guys. Like it's
wow.
Didn't wish it away. Sorry to be the one to break it to you. And then, guess what?
So are bars open in Milwaukee?
So some are basically bars are allowed to open at reduced capacity, and
right.
So I would put it this way: just as if the response, since there's no real coordinated federalized response, that everything is kind of just left up to the states, and depending on what state you live in, depends on what the reaction is. I would say it's actually the same thing with businesses, that depending on how socially responsible the business is, or maybe the political leanings of the business, because somehow this has been politicized, depends on how they react. So some of them are like, woohoo, open for business, let's go. Some are doing like takeout service only, things along those lines. I get it. I really do get it, because you want to be in a situation where, hey, it'd be cool if our business didn't close and we could.
Yeah, everyone's trying to make a living. I understand that.
But by the same token, like if they say there's that kind of hierarchy of risk, right? That they have for what the different activities are and what they do, and like going to a bar is like the highest one.
Yeah, that's come out, especially recently. There's I read something yesterday about that, and bars are the main point of transmission in a lot of places.
Yeah. So that's frustrating, and that's a cultural difference. And as much as I like,
and there's a big drinking culture in Wisconsin.
It's like the primary. It's like the primary social activity.
German culture translated into American culture.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Like shows happen, it's like, hey, I'm gonna go hang out and get wasted with my friends, and also this rad band is playing, that's, and so that's an adjustment to be.
I've had many good shows at the Unicorn in Milwaukee.
It's a cool.
Or no, not the. Is it the Unicorn?
You think Cactus maybe?
No, Cactus Club.
Cactus Club. You think Unicorn is Atlanta? No.
I don't know what I made up the Unicorn. But yeah, the Cactus Club, that place is so rad, and we played there maybe when they first opened.
Yeah, because it's been around for a long time. I used to go and play there on tour years back. It's like a bottom of the hill kind of situation where it's just been around for a really long time.
Oh, speaking of playing years back, a friend gave me an old poster from a show that we played together.
Oh, was that the Great American Music Hall?
Yes.
That's a cool poster.
It's a really cool poster. It's Trans Am with Minus the Bear and Tussle and Belligerator.
You're thinking
Replicator, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That was a great time, man. I have that one. I do. I have that one somewhere. That's an Urban Inks joint, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's like on like brown paper, and it has a really cool graphic.
I think I used to have that on the office/studio door when you and Seb came in last time, if I remember correctly. I might be misremembering that, but those are cool.
Yeah, it was a real blast from the past, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. I gotta tell Conan about this.
Yeah, that was a good show too. That was
That was a good show. It was
a good time.
Great American Music Hall is always a blast. I love that place.
I mean, and it's I don't want to harp too much on the whole like is everything going to be around, even in the fall or beyond.
Slim's closed.
Slim's is gone, man. That blows my mind.
That's a really old venue too. I mean, I don't think it has the same historic. It's not as old a venue as Great American Music Hall, but it was the same ownership.
Yeah, I mean Don Holiday was still in. I mean, it's one of those things where, God, I mean, I saw like Melvins and Helmet there, like in 97 or something along those lines.
Wow, that must have been a great show.
Yeah, and so many. I saw Mudhoney there. Actually, crap, that's how when I met Chris from Replicator the first time, it was at a Mudhoney show at Slim's. The Cosmic Psychos played too.
Wow, cool.
And so it's just weird. It's weird to think that it's gone. And
I know. What the fuck are they going to put in there? Yeah. It's probably going to sit boarded up for so long.
It's just going to sit. It's going to sit around. And did you see that whole? There was that whole thing that happened with the revelations that was it the Panama Papers that I'm thinking of, that they leaked a bunch of documentation. Financial documentation that basically showed that a bunch of people were laundering money by buying up property, like expensive property, specifically property in the Bay Area and things along those lines. I think it's.
Oh wow! No.
It's pretty wild. Like it's not. I mean, that's the hook for me, But it's sort of like there are all these offshore entities, the whole LLC shell game, all that. But the idea being that a lot of people had tried to kind of divine. Oh, why does Bay Area property never go down? Like
down in value?
Yeah, even like during the first tech crash, it didn't go down. Like second tech crash, it didn't go down, and it just never went down. It turned out a bunch of people were like oligarchs and stuff were like laundering money, and they were laundering money by investing in property. And so then
that doesn't surprise me at all.
No, and it unfortunately makes sense. But
and actually, this is interesting. You bring up a good point here. Phil Becker, he's been telling me that he's at least been like browsing the real estate market, and for rental property rates are going down.
Right.
In San Francisco, which is the first time in
my lifetime.
How long?
Yeah. Exactly.
He's like it's noticeable from week to week. He says he'll see properties listed at one price, and then the next week they're still there, but they're a little bit lower, and then the next week a little bit lower.
God, that's so. It's so weird how that works.
Yeah, I mean, and this is happening everywhere, not just in San Francisco. People are leaving the cities and moving to live with their parents, like young people.
Yeah,
who had jobs, maybe tech jobs, or because people are working from home now, they don't need to live in expensive apartments.
Right. The whole thing about needing to live in the Bay Area if your job is in the Bay Area is kind of becomes less relevant if everyone's working remotely. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and that was kind of my deal day job wise with moving in the first place. It's like, oh, well, what I do for my day job, I can do from wherever. So it's kind of like living somewhere where there's a lower cost of living really gains an appeal. Doubly so if you can sort of easily tour from it, because the Midwest is so much easier to tour than. I mean, I love the Bay Area dearly, but it's like.
Yeah. It's isolated.
It is, yeah.
In a strange way.
Yeah,
I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, and when DC is probably the one of the best locations for touring.
Yeah,
because you have the whole Northeast corridor. That's like, to drive to Boston would take you 6 to 8 hours, depending on traffic.
Right.
drive to Chicago in the same, maybe 8 hours. And then all the cities in between, you'd hit Pittsburgh and Cleveland,
Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, Philly is on the way up to Boston, but then you go south.
You got a Research Triangle down Chapel Hill. Yeah.
you go Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Atlanta, and then Trans Am would always play in Florida because we just had we just did it. I don't know. We were like, why not? We go to the beach during the day and we'll play shows at night.
Yeah.
And we developed a fan base down there, and we would go we would do like tours of the South, like specifically, and we would always include Florida. And I love playing down there. And I think a lot of bands skip it, and so people are starved for music down there. Yeah.
It's almost like, it's just out of the way enough that you kind of have to like want to put in the effort to get to. It's almost like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or something, right? In the same way that like you have to like make an effort to do it. And my old co-host Brenna Betts was from Florida, and she always used to one up that and say that, it always was a big deal when a band came down because of that. And so yeah, I think you're right. There's something where you can kind of get yourself a very enthused base fairly
next year, maybe.
Yeah. Hopefully that's the we can live in hope, right?
There's no way to plan for it. Not right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if there's anything that's like I don't know, not saving grace necessarily, but if there's anything with it that can be some small modicum of comfort, is that everybody's in the same boat, right? Everybody's dealing with the same complete sense of like resting state of anxiety and uncertainty, and there's nobody's got like one up on anybody else when it comes time to this stuff.
I guess unless someone's already had it.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you have the much vaunted immunity, in which case, who knows what that's even going to mean as it mutates and it moves on.
That's true.
I don't want to just, this isn't like, the CDC podcast. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like dwell too much on this, but I feel like it's disingenuous not to bring it up. And one thing that's been so interesting about doing so many of these during quarantine is just kind of getting a handle for how folks are dealing with it, especially folks such as yourself with studios. I mean, for me, it kind of became real. It was like, oh, electrical audio's closed. Oh, Jesus. Okay. It's like,
yeah. I mean, I feel even luckier still, because not only do I have a studio in San Francisco and I still have my job, but I also have a home studio in my house in Oakland.
Yeah.
And it doubles as my home office. So when I'm working from home, I have a place away from my children, so I don't have to work like in the living room or in the bedroom or something.
Right.
So that it's kind of an oasis, and I've really like spent a lot of time in this it's like a cottage behind our house. But recently someone put rat poison out in our neighborhood, and some rat has crawled under this cottage and died. So it smells like death in my home studio now.
That's not conducive to creativity at all. Like
no, I've been trying to burn a candle or incense. It's just like,
oh man.
Then it just smells like death with a candle. Like, it's gross. It's so gross. I have to open the windows.
It's like death with a hint of French vanilla.
Yeah, or like, Nag Champa death.
Nag Champa, which, hey man, depending on your feelings in Nag Champa, those might be one and the same, right?
Yeah.
So, well, that's a bummer, but it is, I mean, having like the dedicated space to do the thing, though, I mean that's such a. It's the only thing I can think of is like when they say something's a mitzvah, right? It's like, oh, that's such a nice thing to have.
I feel really lucky.
So
definitely.
I mean, so what do you think? Do you think everyone's just going to be like writing songs and like preparing records and stuff, and there's just going to be this glut of records while at the same time all these bands are trying to like redo these tour dates that are like consolidated into like 1 3-month period? Like, what do you think the end of this is going to be?
Okay, that's a really good question. And when all of this started, I had a lot of momentum. Like, I was like, dude, I'm going to write my COVID record, and I'm just like, got my home studio really like dialed in, and I was trying to do like, not write a song a day, but like get into a rhythm, and I was making music more regularly than I had in a long time, at least as a solo thing at home. And then I think as time wore on, it just kind of faded away as the reality of like, this isn't going to end anytime soon.
Right. Like,
and
this isn't like a pause for creativity. This is like a pause in like literally everything that we know. And that's,
that
hits different.
Yeah, it has, my creativity then has slowed down, but I have taken on a couple projects, mixing some bands, where they've had records that have been in progress, and then they finally finished them, and then they were like, well, I need to mix them.
Right.
And that's really that's something easy I can do at home. And
rad or not.
Yeah. But and then also I play in another band now called Terry Gross.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I was definitely going to bring it up on my own because, first of all, I think it's a fantastic band name. Secondly, I'm stoked that you're playing with Phil Becker because he's an amazing dude and an incredible drummer as well.
Oh yeah, he said to say hello. He said he's an old friend of yours.
I love Phil Becker to death. Played many a show with that guy back in the day. Remarkable talent on multiple levels.
Yes, I agree. Phil's a real gem.
Phil
Becker plays drums in Terry Gross. And our friend Donnie, who's also the co-studio owner with me, he's the bass player. And Donnie and I both sing. Anyway, we've been working on a record for a really long time, and it's finally finished, and we're finally going to put it out. And that's been something that we've been working on the details of through all this. Thrill Jockey is going to put it out, and I think it's coming out in November.
That's lovely news. That's not only lovely news, it's breaking news, which is doubly lovely because that means the show is more
that's the first public announcement right there.
Breaking news. Yeah. No, that's awesome because I haven't got to see you guys play, obviously, because I don't live in the Bay Area anymore. But
yeah, you moved. What gives? When did you leave?
Just about 3 years ago. Just a sheer cost of living thing. Yeah, I mean, well,
right, sure.
The internet kind of makes it seem like everyone is constantly hanging out in the same Zoom chat anyway, right? So,
especially lately.
But yeah, and a lot of people, it's not like I'm put out a press release about it or anything necessarily. But that said, the idea with that was just cost of living.
So where do you live now?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Which,
oh, cool.
That's been interesting because I've been in the position of being the Wisconsin ambassador to my friends in California, but then also having to deal with the actual nonsense that's going on. Like people just, hey, we wish the pandemic away. Cool. Let's just do everything as if we nothing's going on. It's like, yeah, that didn't happen. Like there's still a pandemic going on, guys. Like it's
wow.
Didn't wish it away. Sorry to be the one to break it to you. And then, guess what?
So are bars open in Milwaukee?
So some are basically bars are allowed to open at reduced capacity, and
right.
So I would put it this way: just as if the response, since there's no real coordinated federalized response, that everything is kind of just left up to the states and. Depending on what state you live in, depends on what the reaction is. I would say it's actually the same thing with businesses. That depending on how socially responsible the business is, or maybe the political leanings of the business, because somehow this has been politicized, depends on how they react. So some of them are like, woohoo, open for business, let's go. Some are doing like takeout service only, things along those lines. I get it. I really do get it because you want to be in a situation where, hey, it'd be cool if our business didn't close and we could
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got to make a living. I understand that.
But by the same token, like if like they say there's that kind of hierarchy of risk, right? That they have for what the different activities are and what they do, and like going to a bar is like the highest one.
Yeah, that's come out especially recently. There's like I read something yesterday about that, and bars are the main point of transmission in a lot of places.
Yeah. So that's frustrating, and that's a cultural difference. And as much as I like,
and there's a big drinking culture in Wisconsin.
It's like the primary. It's like the primary social activity.
German culture translated into American culture.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Like shows happen, it's like, hey, I'm gonna go hang out and get wasted with my friends, and also this rad band is playing, that's, and so that's an adjustment to be.
I've had many good shows at the Unicorn in Milwaukee.
It's a cool.
No, not the. Is it the Unicorn?
You think Cactus maybe?
No, Cactus Club.
Cactus Club.
Club.
You think Unicorn is Atlanta? No.
I don't know what I made up the Unicorn. But yeah, the Cactus Club, that place is so rad. And we played there maybe when they first opened.
Yeah, because it's been around for a long time. I used to go and play there on tour like years back. Like it's like a bottom of the hill kind of situation where it's just been around for a really long time.
Oh, speaking of playing years back, a friend gave me an old poster from a show that we played together.
Oh, was that the Great American Music Hall?
Yes.
That's a cool poster.
It's a really cool poster. It's Trans Am with Minus the Bear and Tussle and Belligerator.
And Replicator. You're thinking
Replicator, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That was a great time, man. Yes, I have that one. I do. I have that one somewhere. That's an Urban Inks joint, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's like on like brown paper, and it has a really cool graphic.
I think I used to have that on the office/studio door when you and Seb came in last time, if I remember correctly. I might be misremembering that, but those are cool.
Yeah, it was a real blast from the past, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. I gotta tell Conan about this.
Yeah, that was a good show too. That was
a good show.
It was a good time.
Great American Music Hall is always a blast. I love that place.
I mean, and it's I don't want to harp too much on the whole like is everything going to be around, even in the fall or beyond.
Slim's closed.
Slim's is gone, man. That blows my mind.
That's a really old venue too. I mean, I don't think it has the same historic. It's not as old a venue as Great American Music Hall, but it was the same ownership.
Yeah, I mean Don Holiday was still in. I mean, it's one of those things where, God, I mean, I saw like Melvins and Helmet there, like in 97 or something along those lines.
Wow, that must have been a great show.
Yeah, and so many. I saw Mudhoney there. Actually, crap, that's how when I met Chris from Replicator the first time. It was at a Mudhoney show at Slim's. The Cosmic Psychos played too.
Wow, cool.
And so it's just weird. It's weird to think that it's gone. And
I know. What
weird.
The fuck are they going to put in there? It's probably going to sit boarded up for so long.
It's going to sit. It's going to sit around. And well, did you see that whole? There was that whole thing that happened with the revelations that was it the Panama Papers that I'm thinking of, that they leaked a bunch of documentation, financial documentation that basically showed that a bunch of people were laundering money by buying up property, like expensive property, specifically property in the Bay Area and things along those lines. I think it's.
Oh wow! No.
It's pretty wild. Like it's not. I mean, that's the hook for me. But it's sort of like there are all these offshore entities. The whole LLC shell game, all that. But the idea being that a lot of people had tried to kind of divine. Oh, why does Bay Area property never go down? Like
down in value.
Yeah, even like during the first tech crash, it didn't go down. Like second tech crash, it didn't go down, and it just never went down. That turned out a bunch of people were like oligarchs and stuff were like laundering money, And they're laundering
Right.
money by investing in property. And so then
That doesn't surprise me at all.
no, and it unfortunately makes sense, but
And actually, this is interesting. You bring up a good point here. Phil Becker is looking to move. Actually, you might want to edit that out of this, or is this live?
it is, but we can
Anyway,
everyone forget what you just heard.
He's been telling me that he's at least been like browsing the real estate market and for rental properties. Rental property rates are going down.
Right.
In San Francisco, which is the first time in
my lifetime.
How long?
Yeah. Exactly.
He's it's noticeable from week to week. He says he'll see properties listed at one price, and then the next week they're still there, but they're a little bit lower, and then the next week a little bit lower.
God, that's so. It's so weird how that works.
Yeah, I mean, this is happening everywhere, not just in San Francisco. People are leaving the cities and moving to live with their parents, like young people.
Yeah,
who had jobs, maybe tech jobs, or because people are working from home now, they don't need to live in expensive apartments.
Right. The whole thing about needing to live in the Bay Area if your job is in the Bay Area kind of becomes less relevant if everyone's working remotely. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and that was kind of my deal day job wise with moving in the first place. It's like, oh, well, what I do for my day job, I can do from wherever. So it's kind of like living somewhere where there's a lower cost of living really gains an appeal. Doubly so if you can sort of easily tour from it, because the Midwest is so much easier to tour than. I mean, I love the Bay Area dearly, but it's like,
yeah, it's
a lot harder.
It's isolated.
It is, yeah,
in a strange way.
Yeah,
I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, and when DC is probably the one of the best locations for touring.
Yeah,
because you have the whole Northeast corridor. That's like, to drive to Boston would take you 6 to 8 hours, depending on traffic.
Right.
You drive to Chicago in the same, maybe 8 hours. And then all the cities in between, you'd hit Pittsburgh and Cleveland,
Philadelphia.
Jersey. Oh yeah, Philly is on the way up to Boston, but then you go south.
You got a Research Triangle down Chapel Hill. Yeah.
you go Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Atlanta, and then Trans Am would always play in Florida because we just had we just did it. I don't know. We were like, why not? We go to the beach during the day and we'll play shows at night.
Yeah.
And we developed a fan base down there, and we would go we would do like tours of the South, like specifically, and we would always include Florida. And I love playing down there. And I think a lot of bands skip it, and that's so people are starved for music down there. Yeah,
it's almost like it's just out of the way enough that you kind of have to want to put in the effort to get to. It's almost like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or something, right? In the same way that you have to make an effort to do it. And my old co-host Brenna Betts was from Florida, and she always used to one up that and say that it always was a big deal when a band came down because of that. And so yeah, I think you're right. There's something where you can kind of get yourself a very enthused base fairly easily because there's less competition, just because by nature of how many bands are playing,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a place like DC, any band that plays New York is likely going to play DC. So there's a lot of complacency, and people are like, I don't want to go out. I saw a show, last week or whatever.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you get that big city jadedness that happens.
Yeah, it happens. It's real, definitely. I mean, San Francisco is kind of the same.
Oh, absolutely, because there's that whole that world famous in San Francisco label, which I thought had the best name ever, because there's whole bands that all they do is play the Bay Area, and usually San Francisco specifically, and maybe less so now, just because everyone's are priced out of it. But
that's another interesting thing. Trans Am played our first ever Oakland show a few years ago.
Was that the one at the Starline?
Yes.
That was.
And it totally.
That was 2 days after you were on the show the first time, whenever that was, or 3 days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And it blew my mind that that was like a reality, and it had never occurred to us that we'd never played Oakland before, or the East Bay, or even Berkeley, or anything. And then I went to see Hot Snakes right before the pandemic hit, like March 10th or something. And I still have the ticket stub somewhere. And John Reese got up on the mic and he was like, "Hey, great to see everyone here. This is our first time playing in Oakland. Sorry it took us so long."
Well, because there's always been the sort of tacit thing where if you live in the East Bay, like it's just, oh well, whatever. You can, take BART. You can drive into San Francisco, and it was like suck it up. And the reason why is because East Bay people would go to San Francisco shows, but San Francisco people usually would not go to East Bay shows.
No, we live in Siberia as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, and it's bizarre because it's like it's really not that hard, but it's almost like how it used to be with Manhattan.
Right, totally.
And that's the only way that I can describe it that makes sense to people. But it's something that but unless you're in the Bay Area rock scene, first of all, you probably don't care. But secondly, you won't really know because it's like, oh yeah, but you'll get people at an East Bay show that are like wouldn't come out to an SF show because they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with the parking, I don't want to deal with bridge toll, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So you get a whole different demographic as well. And for my money, in my bands, I'm not trying to denigrate San Francisco, but I've generally had better times with East Bay shows. And now I say that. My old band being from Oakland, of course, that's the case, right? But like,
right.
But there also was. It used to be that there was like a different vibe, and it wasn't so uniform. But as people have been priced out of San Francisco and have kind of gone to the East Bay as sort of a consolation prize, then that's sort of like the lines have become a little more blurred there as well.
I think it's what's happened in New York is it's happened in the Bay Area too, where now actually everything that's cool that's happening is happening in the East Bay.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Same, Brooklyn is where it's, now it just keeps going further east in New York. But yeah, those parallels are pretty easy to draw.
So you've, at this point now, you've been in the Bay Area for quite a while. How have you
Since
found
2003.
it? Yeah, I was going to say, like, maybe even longer than I thought. As I was saying that, I was like, it's longer than you think, buddy. West Coast versus East Coast. What musically, what do you think the cultural differences are with shows? And
that's a good question. Although it's been so long since I've lived on the East Coast that my perspective is certainly not current. But when I was living there, one thing I noticed. Well, because I moved from DC to San Francisco to play in the Champs, and like on a very like specific level, Trans Am was like we were just like more. There was a lot more experimenting and recording jams, and it was like really kind of freeform. Mm-hmm. But when I moved out here, the Champs had a totally different approach. It was like way more time spent in the rehearsal space, fine-tuning things, arrangements, and writing songs. The process was way slower. And
you also were coming at it from the point of being like a fan, but also, you had like known those guys and had played with those guys tons, so you already knew and liked the music, but
yes,
it's a different thing to play it than it is to.
Yeah, definitely. It was a huge change of approach. The process was just very different between the two bands. The two bands are like, there's a lot of differences. Obviously, like even just listening to them, but even though we toured a lot together and we're good friends, as soon as I started playing with them, I was like, holy shit, this is like, that was the most challenging band I've ever played in for so many different reasons. Most of them musical, just like
the chops level of just.
Yeah, it was the whole
thing.
It's
a lot to keep track of, it would seem, right? Were you charting? Like,
yeah, the whole thing was really hard. Yeah, it was a really hard experience, and I gained a lot from it, but it was not easy at all.
And
it was really nerve-wracking throughout most of it.
Yeah. And there's always that thing too of a band that you like, and then you're playing in that band you like. Like, I'm trying to remember. I think it was like Ray Washam was talking about playing in the Big Boys, And, and just like they were his favorite band, and then he's like, oh, now I'm gonna be playing in it. Okay, and like just there's sort of the self-imposed pressure, but there's also the how much do I change? Do I change what I like about this? Like to put my own swing on it? Like what's the what's the MO? And in the case of the Champs, it's like, God, you had such an iconic player that like it always just seemed like, okay, those three dudes are just like it's those three dudes doing their thing. I guess that's a long way of saying big shoes to fill. I mean, not that you can't.
Oh, hell yeah. Josh Smith is an insanely good guitar player. And it was his band. He and Tim Sodi started the band.
Yeah, exactly. Like Tim came later. A lot of people don't realize that because I think if people have a tendency to apply unearned credit to people that they already know from other things that are more famous.
Right.
And I love Tim Green. Absolutely. But it's like, he didn't start that band. And you're the first one to say it.
He was the new guy until I joined.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't realize that like and the other Tim is a ripper guitar player as well as a drummer. And like there's obviously the songs where they pull that off live, it was always interesting. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is it was a very locked in dynamic. And while from a surface level there were certain elements that were very similar-ish to Trans Am, like sort of like the warm but aware embrace of prog and big rock probably being one of them. Very different, hits differently too. And so when you have these almost more like academic decathlon level riffs and arrangements, how do you even approach that from a mechanical perspective of just like taking it all in?
Dude, it was like I had to had my hard drive wiped and reprogrammed from the ground up. I swear, it was like every rehearsal was like this crazy musical brain freeze. It was super challenging.
And is it, were those songs, okay, it's this many measures, over this time signature, then it does this, or was it like, oh no, watch this for the change, like, because it seemed very.
It was super composed. There was not very much left to chance, or, but like I would never count. It was all. We rehearsed to the point where everything became physical memory. Muscle memory. So ideally, like you wouldn't think about anything, and your hands would you'd start the show, and your hands would just kind of do their thing.
It would do the thing it was supposed to do. Yeah. That's ideally. Then introduce alcohol and whatever else, and who knows what's going to happen. It was a pretty slippery like brewer. Well, in all the shows I saw you play with them, I thought were fantastic, and I definitely.
Thank you.
There was a lot of crossed arm bros, and let's be clear, they were all dudes. They were just like, "All right, we'll see about this
guy."
Yeah, exactly. Or even people that knew you, they're like, "All right, keyboard boy, better." It's like they have guitars in that band too, right?
Yeah.
But
true. I mean, I was very self-conscious about being like, I almost said no. I almost didn't do it. But it came at a point in my life where I needed an excuse to move because I was so tired of living in DC.
Right.
And I felt like if I didn't move at that time, I would never move, and I'd still be living there. And I don't regret it at all. Like, not for a second.
Did you just feel burned out from being there? Or was it
just I mean, Trans Am, I think we had been touring so relentlessly for so long, and we kind of hit a wall, and there was a lot of things kind of like happening at the same time. Like I was in a relationship, and we had agreed, me and my girlfriend at the time had agreed that we would eventually move together to someplace. And then this thing, like Tim Green was like, I have a room available in my house. I have a studio in the basement where you can work. You can do sessions there, and then you can play in the Champs.
Yeah, that's a pretty soft landing. That's
and it was like the room was insanely cheap, and I was like, all right, this is like falling in my lap. I'm going to take this opportunity.
Right.
Give it a try. Move to California and see. And I've always loved. I mean, San Francisco is what's not to love. You know, it's easy to fall in love with the city when you're on tour.
I mean, and it's, you know, I didn't move away because I didn't like it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you and so many other people, it's like, that's the bittersweet thing about San Francisco. There's so many great people who live here. And then I swear it's like once a month, someone will be like, I'm moving. Yeah. And it's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. And you almost get used to it, but you never quite get used to it.
No, it's still hard.
So, okay. So you got a situation where you're pulling up stakes from a very, very comfortable lifestyle and well-worn lifestyle within some place that you're familiar with, and you're going to a place that you know, but you only really have known it from visiting, from touring, right?
Being on tour, yeah.
There's a big difference between being on tour and living in a place.
Oh, hell yeah.
So what was the big takeaway there of like, what was your first epiphany of
Okay, well, yeah, that's a good question. I remember having this moment. Okay, so we moved into Tim Green's house in the Excelsior, which is on, it's like on the outer southern edge of the city, basically. And to me, when I would visit San Francisco, we'd stay at Tim's place, and that was San Francisco to me. It was like, okay.
Yeah, it's this.
Whatever. Right. And then living there after like a month or two, I was like, man, we live so fucking far away from I can't even ride my bike because there's too many huge hills between here and there.
Like in another area, it would be a different city, right? I mean, because of how long it takes to get from point A to point B. Yeah.
And then so that slowly, and then there was the other thing. The other reality was, while Tim had offered me the opportunity to work at Louder, which was an awesome studio, it still
studio.
is,
yeah.
But now it's in a different location. Even better now than it was.
A very different location, yeah. Good old foothills of Grass Valley.
Yeah, and but Tim was so busy in his studio that I found it difficult to book sessions.
There wasn't any time.
It was just like two. Yeah. It was two. Yeah, it was the reality. Was different than what we had planned on, and so that's actually what led me to find Kurt Schlegel and his studio, Lucky Cat, where Kurt was the opposite. He was always gone on tour, and his studio was vacant and dark. And he was like, "Yeah, you should book sessions here." And
it's a great studio as well. And Kurt's definitely one of the most unsung heroes of the Bay Area recording world.
I loved working at Lucky Cat. I have a lot of fond memories, and I've made some great records there. But that's also moved to a new location, and because I don't even know what's in there now, but it became too expensive for Kurt to keep operating. But,
yeah, it's probably a .com of some kind.
I don't know. I think it might also be empty. It's like someone's just sitting.
Panama Papers.
Yep, there you go.
Putin's got a lot of money tied up in that. Is he not going to let it go? Well, so
you're right.
And you also came in kind of right before that most recent Borg takeover. Like it was just starting then. The tech takeover of the Bay Area, which it tends to be a frequent topic on this show, especially when I have anyone that has like lived in the Bay Area for any length of time, and I think for obvious reasons. But it's also something that I think for folks outside the Bay Area don't necessarily know. I mean, the Bay Area used to be very different. Like it was one of the most welcoming places for just, freaks, nerds, and weirdos ever. And I'm not just talking about hippie stuff. I'm talking about, crazy
Anything.
noise shows, metal, like whatever, anything. And I mean, it's no surprise that like a band like Steel Pole Bathtub, landed in San Francisco, right? It's no surprise that Flippers from the Bay Area, but
one of my favorites.
Same here. And there was this slow takeover where everything sort of started to, I'm going to use the word pivot towards tech. And there was like a few years that, there was sort of like a transitional period. And it's not that it wasn't good stuff being made, but it gradually became less and less of a place for artists and musicians and weirdos to be able to afford to live and to be able to make art. And so hence the flight, which was, usually based off of necessity. But where I'm driving with all of this is not you moved as a musician and as a engineer and producer to the Bay Area during this time, like as this stuff is changing. So it seems to me from the outside that you kind of caught like a little bit of the glory days, like just like
right.
a couple years, and then
my early part of being here was definitely that, and then I just start to see, like I was just saying, like all these people just start to fall away.
Yeah.
Watch it, like when John Dwyer left, I got so sad. I was like, wait, you're the mayor of San Francisco. What
are you allowed to do that? Like, I don't think you're allowed to do that.
No, don't leave. Yeah. But at the same time, I completely understand. It's like someone who aspires to like buy a house and do some sort of adult things. It's like it's out of reach for so many people here,
So were you? Yeah, absolutely. And
even someone as successful as John.
Yeah, it's just, it's not and that's something that's very difficult to describe to people in the Midwest of it just being like, that's not an option.
Right.
They're like, what? Like, oh no, but what if? No, it's just not an option. Like it's
impossible.
It will never happen. Like it's not going to be a thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So did you meet Donnie back then?
Yeah, actually, that's a funny story. Talk about like, okay, so I moved to San Francisco. I had this theoretical job booking sessions at Louder.
Mm-hmm.
But then the reality set in. It's like, okay, Tim's so busy with the studio, and I'm broke now, and I need to find a job. So where did I go? Bottom of the Hill. I went to Bottom of the Hill asking if they needed a sound man. Do you need anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Donnie and Lars Savage. And they, I don't remember if it was Donnie was the manager of the sound crew or Lars, but I turned in an application and we had an interview, and the next thing I knew, I was doing sound for Ohm and Earthless. That was the first show I mixed.
You know what? Yeah, I think I was at that show, and I was like, "Is that Phil on the soundboard?"
Awesome.
Yeah,
that was great. So awesome.
You know what it was? That was the first time I saw Earthless, and I was like, "God damn, this is killer!"
Yeah, that was the first time I saw them too. It was when I met all those guys, and what a great show to break the ice for me. And I mean, I'd always loved playing Bottom of the Hill, and I knew the venue.
Yeah,
not nearly as well as after working there, but I got to know all the people, and that was like a really great community to fall into.
Absolutely. Like hard to do as far as like lifers that are just doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's crazy is I not only do Donnie and I still work together at El Studio, play together in a band, but I still work with Donnie and Lars at KQED.
How funny.
Yeah.
Do you ever listen to Roland?
Oh yeah.
Roland's great, man.
Oh yeah.
I love that band.
Yeah, definitely.
So was Donnie still in film school when that was around?
Probably.
Yeah, I think it was probably hard to place it all at this point. So so you meet him back then, Bottom of the Hill days, and then so you got to know Phil Becker because of El Studio, I would imagine, right? Or did you already know him from Triclops?
I recorded Triclops at Lucky Cat.
That's right.
And I think that's how Phil and I met, was during that session. And you know what it was actually? It was before that session. when I moved out of Tim Green's house, me and my girlfriend moved to Arkansas Street, right around the corner from bottom of the hill and from the Parkside.
Oh, right. Of course. Yeah.
And Phil lived on Arkansas Street, but like a little bit further up. And I don't remember, I think maybe Kurt Schlegel may have introduced us, but somehow I was introduced to Phil, and Phil invited me over, and he was like, "Here, let me show you my grow op." And he had, like, in the middle of his tiny apartment, he built this like plywood shed.
Right.
It was like literally in his living room. There was like a room within a room, and that was his like grow room. And I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty intense." Like this guy's cool. And then like me and my girlfriend broke up, and like I moved out of that place and whatever. It was like that was a really cool moment when I lived around the corner from Bottom of the Hill, and I worked there, and then I was also working at Lucky Cat. So my commute was to either place was all of like
a couple blocks or something. Yeah. So I mean, and you knew Phil was a monster drummer. Obviously, Triclops was no slouch.
Totally.
Pins of Light. You probably Lower 48 was probably already done by the time you came out.
I didn't. I never saw Lower 48.
Yeah, they were. That was some World Cup drumming, to be sure. That was.
Yeah.
So. Well, and so we'll get to Terry Gross. I realized last time. First of all, I'm really bad with returning guests of not covering the same topic. So. We're probably covering some of the same stuff, and I just don't care, frankly. But for a 123 episode break, I think I'm allowed, right?
Sure.
Also, I remember like
people have bad short-term memory.
Right.
Anyway.
There's a bunch of people that like listen to this show now that never listened to it back then too. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time apologizing about it. But I don't think we talked about Life Coach at all last time. Like I don't think I even brought it up. I think I spent more time like on some probably nonsense and bits or something.
Well, we're talking with. Me and Seb, we were really stoned on that show.
Yeah, so. And we were, and he'd just come from the airport too. And that son of a bitch could have broke the news that he had joined Baroness that day, and he chose not to. God damn it.
Yeah.
Because he already had hit it, but I think it hadn't been revealed yet. But that's fine. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
It was great having you guys on, and great to be able to do it in person.
That was fun.
So how did you? So Life Coach. So you're already out of the Bay Area. How did you develop what came to be Life Coach? Because did you envision it as a solo thing originally?
Yeah, well, the first, I put out a solo record that I sort of compiled from pieces that had been like demos that never really became Trans Am songs, or like either like those guys weren't interested, or like I never presented them as songs to Trans Am. But I eventually accumulated enough songs that my first solo record I put out is Phil Manley, and the title of the album was Life Coach.
Right?
But then I started playing shows. Once that record came out, I started playing solo shows, and I was calling it Phil Manley Life Coach. And then I eventually started working on new material, and it became clear to me that I didn't want to do it with a drum machine anymore. So I called my friend John Theodore, who I'd played with in Golden for many years.
Right, which we didn't even talk about Golden last time either. Yeah,
and
Golden was a totally underrated band. I mean, I think the only time I saw Golden, I think, was it with Trans Am? Maybe it was with Trans Am.
Yeah, totally possible.
But I loved it, and I thought it was great. I mean, I got the record, and then I was like, oh, that band's not around anymore. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Golden also played at the Great American Music Hall with Makeup, and then Golden once played at the Bottom of the Hill with Rye Coalition and Breakout, the Thin Lizzy cover band.
I remember that. I was at that show, and I specifically remember because I believe you guys played Dedication.
Yes.
Which is even amongst Thin Lizzy fans, like not like sort of not like one that people like normally go to, but I was like, oh, sick! They're playing Dedication. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
okay,
anyway,
so John Theodore, amazing drummer. phenomenal drummer.
I sent John all of these tracks, and John's a really busy guy, and I was like, not really. I sent the tracks to, I think I sent them to Seb, to John, to Tony Patera from Zombie, and to Kid Millions from Oneida. And of all of the drummers, John was the first to reply. And I think he was at a point in his life where he just needed to play or something. I don't know, but like the stars aligned and he was like, fuck yeah. He was living at the time, he was living in the guest house at Flea's property in Malibu.
Nice.
And it was like
trying to pull
cottage,
a rocker Kato Kalin situation.
Yeah, it was a cool spot. I went to visit him when he was living there, and it was right on the one, like literally, like his bedroom window was like he could reach out and like touch the cars driving down the Pacific Coast Highway.
Nice.
But then there was a garage next to his, like a separate garage next to his cottage, where he set up his drums, and he recorded all the drums himself, like using a Mackie mixer and his Pro Tools setup.
Okay,
yeah.
So
and he did a really good job. He used 3 microphones, and it came out sounding killer. And the track suddenly came to life. And then I got Isaiah Mitchell. He helped play some guitar on some of that.
He's pretty good on the guitar. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky. I mean, actually, me, John, and Isaiah and Zack De La Rocha actually jammed for a minute.
Really?
Yeah, never took off the ground. It was very brief.
What did that sound like? What kind of stuff were you digging into? Just,
I mean, it was like literally one jam.
Okay.
And I don't remember it ever. It wasn't like we didn't leave the rehearsal space like, yeah, let's do that again. It was like, oh well, we tried that.
Right. Well, I mean, hey man, better if you realize it doesn't work. Like, better you realize that before you commit to it. For sure. Yeah,
but I mean, me, John, and Isaiah, even though we never actually played any of that stuff live as the 3 of us,
you knew you had that shorthand of being able to play together and kind of.
Yeah, and then I think that there's a common bond between the 3 of us, which is we all love ZZ Top. And that made it just super easy.
Do you see the doc? By the way, we're talking about Isaiah from Earthless, by the way, just for anyone
Isaiah Mitchell,
not aware of the Amazing Man Earthless. And of course, Mario Rubalcaba was on. He was awesome. But yeah, ZZ Top doc. I liked it quite a bit. I also liked the fact that like basically they get to Eliminator and then they were like, and they still play to this day. Like they just.
I think that was the smartest move.
It's like, oh, cool. You don't have to like talk about step into my sleeping bag or anything. Like is like that's a good line of demarcation. That not that there's a couple good tunes on like that one record somewhat recently, but like I was like, yeah, what you want to hear about is all like that early stuff, and I thought that was
of course they dwell on the stuff that the fans want to hear about.
I thought that was an awesome move, and a couple people got pissed off about it, but like that I know, and I was like, really, you want to like get like deep into the nitty gritty of these like very mediocre records? Let's remember them as like the titans they are.
Yes, I agree 100%. My wife and I went to see that at a theater in Berkeley. When it came out.
Nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. I never thought that I could like that band even more.
Yeah.
And after watching that, I was like, this
these guys
band
are rad.
never ceases to amaze me. They're and Frank, like listening to Frank Beard's interviews, he's so funny.
Yeah, he's so funny and just kind of matter of fact about stuff where it's like, oh, all right. Damn, dude. Okay. Right on.
He pulls no punches.
Yeah, I like that documentary, I guess. But yeah, I also like that they stopped it where they stopped it, and I thought I thought it was doubly funny if you were aware of the discography past that record. And don't get me wrong, I freaking love Eliminator. I think Eliminator is amazing.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I can tell.
But Afterburner is where I draw the line.
Afterburner is like, there's a couple jams here, but this is kind of getting.
Yeah, it's a little too much programming and not enough, like, it's a little bit like, and then the record after that was called Recycler.
Which is that's the correct name for that because
there you go.
Yeah, there's some, and even like on Afterburner, there's some harsh tokes on Afterburner as well. Like,
Donnie recently was playing me some Afterburner. He was like, "There's some stuff on here that really sounds like Trans Am. You should check it out."
Well, that is one of the first things. Like when I first kind of got into Trans Am, and I was thinking of stuff like Barbados or whatever, where I was like, "Oh yeah, they got a kind of ZZ Top vibe sometimes." But then when the synths started to play a heavier presence, I was definitely like, "Oh no, this is kind of like the sort of synthy ZZ Top that I can fuck with. Like this is cool." Because not a lot of bands do that. I've definitely heard bands that kind of do a ZZ Top deal, for sure. But
yeah,
and maybe it's because it's just a hard line to walk.
Yeah,
between total like cheese dick stuff and like totally awesome.
Yeah, like butt rock.
Yeah, well, and that's actually. I don't want to get back to the other story, but that's actually a good question. Where do you find the line, right? Where do you find the line with that kind of thing? Like, how far is too far?
Well, Trans Am was never afraid to cross that line.
I mean, I think Trans Am jumped over a couple lines, but
yeah.
But you did it with Full Throated Abandon, like the whole move to like the TA album, which at the time, and it's hard to, we live in a world of like instant reaction to everything, right? But
yeah, right now, yeah.
But the delayed reaction of just like, hey, they're like in these suits and they made like this weird new wave record almost. Like I had a dude that was like, is this the same band? This is the same band, right? I was like, yeah, it's the same band. They're just they're doing this.
I don't know what they're smoking, but
and that's well, and I want to. Okay, so we'll come back to that because we were talking. ZZ Top, John Theodore, Zack De La Rocha, Jam didn't work out. Isaiah.
Oh, Life Coach.
Fucking hell, yeah.
Right. So John,
this is like Inception.
John put the drums on that record, and then, I had a record together, and I turned it into Thrill Jockey, and then that came out, and it was tricky because of John's notoriety and celebrity.
Yeah.
Having played in
Mars Volta, which that's the only, his lineup is the only lineup of Mars Volta I ever saw, by the way.
Yeah, that's the same with me,
and I'm okay
with
that.
But it was really kind of crushing. But like the day where it's like right before that record came out, the Life Coach record, mm-hmm. John. I shouldn't say it was crushing, but it was like poor timing. John was asked to play with Queens of the Stone Age, and he was like, "I got to do this," and I was like, "Of course you've got to do this."
Yeah.
And but it was also like, well, okay, they're, and then so I was like, kind of like, couldn't play shows as Life Coach without John.
Yeah, because how are you going to go back to using a drum machine, right?
Because he wasn't available.
Yeah, exactly.
We did actually do some tours together. We did a tour opening for Moon Duo, and that was really great.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, and it was. I remember I was impressed from an outside perspective, like, oh wow, they're making this work, and like here's the windows we have to do this. Let's make it work. I thought that was really cool, and.
Mm-hmm. And then also we did a tour with Ladio Balaco. Oh, not Ladio Balaco. Psychic Paramount.
Oh, yeah. I love Ladio Balaco, though. That was a...
Yeah, and the Psychic Paramount, I think I might like even more. But then we also did a tour with Tortoise. So we had some good tours, and we probably will do it again, but it's just been a while, and, like now, who knows when.
Yeah, nobody's touring right now.
Life has gotten exponentially more complicated for both of us. John has a kid.
Yeah.
And actually in Wisconsin. His wife and his daughter live in La Crosse.
Oh, wow. No kidding. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And yeah, and obviously I have 2 kids and a job, so
Yeah, it's
touring
always
is
more
less and
difficult.
less an option. But we find a way to find these like week to 10-day windows from here and there. Same with Terry Gross. We were planning on coming when the Terry Gross record was supposed to come out in November. We wanted to go to Chicago and play shows and like probably do Chicago, maybe Madison or Milwaukee.
Yeah. I think I even might have like
Wisconsin.
hit up Becker of being like, hey, dude, let me know.
Yeah. Well, when we do finally get to do it, we want to fly out there.
Oh yeah,
to play some shows in the Midwest and play Minnesota, Minneapolis.
It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it.
Yeah, we will.
So, well, and that's awesome. That's also excellent breaking news. But with life coaches, that's got to be. You're soaked for your friend and your bandmate, of course. Like that's a big like golden ticket situation. Great. There's. As far as big rock bands go, like it's hard to do much better than that. That's operating certainly at that caliber. But then by the same token, like you're like, we're also just kind of getting this to where it's really dialed in, like we're really like locked into it. So you've got both of those things going on at once. Like that's tough, man. Like I gotta imagine that might have it's. When something is a bummer and you're happy for your friend at the same time.
Well, I was more happy for him, but it was the reality of me. Like my days as like a professional touring musician definitely are behind me because I don't want to be the dad who's not home because I'm touring all the time. And I'm happy to go on tour. Like if I can go on tour 10 days a year, even that would be rad.
Well, and
it
seems like Trans Am kind of has pivoted into like a sort of tactical strike adventure based situation.
Yeah, it's a fishing trip.
Yeah.
Fishing trip. That's the way we look at it. If Nathan, the bass player, lives in New Zealand now. After Trump was elected,
you don't want to stay on the same continent. Yeah.
No. Well, he and his wife had a deal that if Trump was elected, they were going to move to New Zealand. And, you know what happened. So, and they did. They were like, fuck it.
And New Zealand's actually dealt with this better than I think almost any other country on the planet. So
I know they're laughing now. I mean, they're just like,
that's fun.
So many times over.
Yeah, exactly. Turns out it was the right move.
Yeah.
But but going from Trans Am being I'm in a band full time, hitting it hard, doing the thing, and switching to the more fishing trip, tactical strike, whatever terminology you want to use.
Right.
But then by the same token, being able to still look at the band's catalog as a catalog and kind of pull from the new stuff, like, the stuff that, the hits, the things that people want to hear. I didn't notice any, like, a misstep at all in the Trans Am shows I've seen since it's stepped down, for sure.
Well, yeah. And what's interesting is when we started, it was more like it is now because we were all kind of scattered. Like, we were at different universities. Nathan was at UNC Chapel Hill. Seb was at Bard College in New York, and I was at Oberlin in Ohio. So we were always getting together kind of like randomly, occasionally. And then after college ended and we all moved to DC, we're first to Maryland and then to DC. We're living together, touring together, recording together, always together.
It's a lot of time, yeah.
Yeah, and that eventually kind of blew up and we all moved different places. Nathan moved to New Zealand for the first time. He had subsequently moved back to Portland and then now is back in New Zealand. So, and Seb lives in New York, but he moved to London for a period. Everyone kind of
went there different, yeah.
Yeah.
But that at that point you got to, you're going to keep playing because it's not like there's acrimonious situations. Then that like you like doing this, people like seeing it, so there's no reason to not find a way to make it work, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll get together again when it makes sense, logistically. And I think we all look forward to that. But right now, who knows when. But
Well, yeah, I mean that's not a Trans Am problem. That's a Earth problem. I mean,
that's a human race problem.
yeah, exactly. That's a like, when you get to the point where we're worrying about Trans Am tours, we're in a pretty good spot, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I agree. And we may just have to put everything down once we get to that point, just so we can go on tour.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ. So, talk to me about the first record. You did that with John, right? With John McIntyre.
John McIntyre.
Yeah, I'm talking
the
about
first record. Yeah, that was
the blue one with the looks like a
the vertical white stripes. Yeah, that was. It started. We recorded like half of that ourselves, just sort of on 4-track, like, and. Well, actually, I should back up. The whole way we got hooked up with John was we recorded a concert that we played in Chapel Hill. Like someone brought a 4-track to the show and recorded the show. And we compiled the songs from that. Like, we put together like a 6-minute montage of all those songs, put it on a 7-inch, a split 7-inch with our friends, Thigh Masterson, who were a band.
That's a band from
Oberlin. Yeah, they were from Oberlin. And John McIntyre had gone to Oberlin, and he had moved to Chicago and was working at Idful recording studio. And Thigh Master went to Idful, recorded with John. So Thigh Masterson's side was recorded with John. Trans Am was on the other side. Record comes out. Thigh Masterson sends the copy to John. John was like, "Who's this Trans Am band?" Contacts Thigh Masterson, and we hook up with John that way. And John's like, "Yeah, I'd love to record you guys." So then Trans Am, we had all this material that was already kind of in the works. But then we had all this other stuff that we wanted to record with John. So we did half of the record with John at Idful. And then we put it all together as an album and then sent it to a bunch of labels. And only a handful of people this is back like when it was like, you get a copy of CMJ.
Right. This is a very different time for a lot of the younger listeners than it is now.
We made like cassette copies with like Kinko's artwork that we did by hand, and we got the copy of CMJ with all of the record label addresses. We picked out, highlighted all the labels we wanted to send it to, and we sent it to probably like 20 to 30 labels. Of all the labels that responded, only Discord, Cranky, Simple Machines. I feel like those are the only labels that responded. And Ian Mackay was the only one who was like, he was interested enough that he wanted to meet me and like talk about it.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. I'd never met him before.
Yeah, I mean, that's just cool in and of itself, right? I mean, it's
he was like,
Ian Mackay, yeah.
I'm really into this, but I don't know if it's going to fit on our roster, but maybe you want to get together and talk about it anyway. And so I met him at the Black Cat, and we just chatted, and he was super friendly. And he was like, yeah, it's just a little bit too far afield from everything on our label. I just don't know how this would work. And I was like, I understand.
Yeah.
But, anyway, thanks. And then time wore on, and we were actually set to release it with our friends. We were going to do like a co-release where friends of ours in Cleveland, this guy Rick, had a label called Happy Go Lucky.
Oh,
and
of course,
he was going to do I don't know if he was going to do the CD or the vinyl. And then our friends in Chapel Hill were going to, their label was called Tuba Frenzy. They had a fanzine and a label. And I don't remember who was going to do what, but we had it all lined up, and like that was the deal. And then we went to play a show in Chicago we opened for the Sea and Cake on the 4th of July.
Nice.
And Bettina, who runs Thrill Jockey, was at the show, and she was like, "Can I put out your record?" And we were like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
And and then we had to break the news to those labels, and Rick from Happy Go Lucky was like, that's totally fine, I completely understand, do your thing. But our friends at Tuba Frenzy got really bent out of shape, and they were like, how could you do this? We had an arrangement, we had an agreement, and it was really hard. We were like, we felt really shitty because we had totally betrayed these, like we'd like backed out of a deal. And I think in the end, I feel like it's all water under the bridge now. We made amends with them, and we're still friends with them.
Well, that's good. And I mean, it's a great debut, and with the context of modern context, I think it's less jarring maybe than when it came out, just because there's been a more acceptability of like your certain elements of like prog and krautrock and whatever being in rock music now. But I think you guys were kind of at the paragon of sort of melding that.
Well, we were an anomaly. Certainly, when we would go to play shows and we'd have like a Casio keyboard on a guitar case on a keyboard stand with like a DJ mixer, with had a sampler, and like it was so homebrew and like super scrappy, and the sound guy would just be like, "What
are you doing? What is this?"
And I would plug everything into my amp.
Yeah.
And it was before we would even bother with DI boxes. It was like
right, you just run it through the amp and away you go.
It was so crazy sounding, and cool, but it was very primitive and very like we were like as equal parts Kraftwerk and Van Halen. It was like
totally.
But then like also like Polvo, like everything was like super homebrew.
Yeah, and it works well. It's a unique sound that that others would emulate in their own way, and it would come out sounding like how they would sound out. It's funny you mentioned Discord too, because I was trying to think about when El Guapo first got together, but I want to say they got together. They were around then, but they kind of hadn't done anything yet. But that's the only band I can think of on Discord that's like would be like remotely in the same family.
El Guapo was definitely post. Trans Am was already pretty established, I think, when El Guapo started. And I actually recorded...
You recorded one of their records. Yeah, I forget.
At least one. And they also then maybe recorded another record called Super System.
Yeah, when they decided to change their name.
Yeah.
So talk to me about between, like, what's it, 96 to 97, from the first album over to Surrender to the Night.
So Surrender to the Night, that's when we were all living together. So we were actually composing music together. Like I was working in a music store, Nathan was working at a book and record store, and Seb was actually going to graduate school for physics. But we all lived in the same house.
How did I not know that? I'm such a physics nerd. How did I not know that? I would have like just...
Yeah, he was studying astrophysics at University of Maryland. He got a scholarship there.
Oh, man.
But that was also this critical turning point for us where we had agreed, we put out the record on Thrill Jockey and we were getting lots of tour offers, and we were just becoming less and less available and to do other things. And so Seb basically dropped. Well, it was also becoming clear to him that if he stayed on that track, most of the people who went through the University of Maryland physics program went on to work for defense contractors.
Yeah,
and he was like, I have zero interest. I have less than zero interest in doing that. So,
I mean, it gives you something to talk about with Brian May if you ever meet Queen, but
yeah, or what's his name, Jeff Skunk Baxter.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. On the defense
like
contractor trip.
Yeah. Or something.
He was he did some war profiteering too. Skunk Baxter is that's a different podcast we can do.
Yes. But anyway, so what were we talking about?
So yeah, Brian May, astrophysics. Seb was working towards school stuff.
Oh yeah. So then we got a lot of. Oh yeah, so Surrender to the Night. Okay, so we were building this record at home, all four of us or three of us, and then we wanted to do it again with John, but we wanted to record. We did like more of that record with John than the previous record, which was like only half recorded by John. We did some recording at home, and we brought the 8-track with us. We drove to Chicago with all our instruments and the 8-track tape. And they were still building the studio in his loft.
Oh, wow. So it was still being created at that point.
It was like we showed up with all our gear and we're like, okay, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
And they had like all of the cable harnesses like laid out on the floor, and they were like up all night soldering. Like,
getting it all ready at the last second. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really like plug it in and turn it on and hope everything works. And luckily it did.
Yeah.
So we did that in the Tortoise Loft. It was like Doug McCombs was living there. Dave Pajo was also living there. And who else? Johnny and John and Jeff Parker. But that was before Jeff was officially in the band, I think. But I remember borrowing Dave's Strat for some of the record and thinking like halfway through recording with it, I was like, this is the guitar he played on that Slint record.
Well,
having that realization, like as I was playing it, like, wow, this is a cool guitar.
You're tracking the stuff like the studio's baling wire and duct tape.
Yeah, it was also funny too because it was happening during the Olympics, the Summer Olympics. I'm not sure where the Summer Olympics was, but maybe that was the Atlanta Summer Olympics. But anyway, Doug McCombs was I remember him very distinctly. He would he had a rocking chair and he had the TV on constantly just playing the Olympics. And he had an acoustic bass guitar and he'd just sit there and write music all day long. Like he didn't do anything except for sit and play bass and watch the Olympics. And I actually reminded him of that lately, and he's like, I don't remember doing that at all. And I was like, yep. What you were doing. And,
that's a pretty memorable thing. Like, that's a story that, that would be difficult to make up, you know?
And I also remember we would work all day, and then we'd get wasted at night. We'd just, drink beer all night and tequila or whatever. And then I remember waking up on the floor of their loft, really hungover, with cat hair in your mouth, like you do. and then looking up and Jim O'Rourke was sitting at the kitchen table, like freshly showered and just like all dressed and ready to go and staring at us like three losers sitting on the floor.
What are you dudes doing?
Yeah, it was a really funny place. I don't know if at the time it really we were impressed to be around all those guys because
of course, yeah.
We looked up to all of them for sure, and I don't know, in hindsight, it's pretty funny to look back on it, but because we were just these scruffy dudes who wanted to party, you know.
Yeah, it's not like you had established your bona fides as being this force to be reckoned with or anything. Like you're just in this very post-rock monkeys.
Yes.
Sort of situation.
We were riding on their coattails, that's for sure.
So in that record, it kind of brings in even more of kind of the synthy sort of stuff and kind of establishes more of that as part of the sound. Did you feel like that one you just been able to be a band more at that time, been more road tested on stuff did you find that making those songs, did they hit differently, or did anything come to mind when you were trying to do on that record that was different than the one before it?
That's a good question. It's hard for me to remember. I do feel like it was a very different record because we wrote it all together, and I feel like that
makes a difference.
There's a cohesiveness to it, and also we had sort of an overarching concept for the record, which helped us put it together as an album.
Sure, yeah. So the concept came first then, or was it something that developed?
Maybe, or it grew in parallel. But then I remember before we even started recording, we went out to eat brunch with John, and we were sitting at the table, and we laid out this whole concept for him, and he was like, "Okay, fine. If that's
Sounds
what you
all
want
right.
to do,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. I'm just here to press record.
Yeah, I'll
and
push the button whenever you're ready to do those things that you just talked about. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was. I feel like that was his reaction. But he was a good sport.
I mean, so looking back on it now, like as a dude who records, like you're kind of like, oh yeah, like he didn't need the brief history of time there, or was it just?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I like to indulge people if they're trying to go for like a concept record,
Yeah.
And try to get in the spirit of the whole thing. You know, I mean, if Future World had that too, it definitely has a concept.
Future World's absolutely a concept record, and then I do want to get into that. But can you talk about the surveillance before?
Oh yeah, the surveillance comes in between, and I feel like that was a record that was really born of us. We were like such road dogs at that point.
Right.
We were like barely ever home. When we would tour we would do the States, then we'd tour in Europe. We even toured in like Japan and New Zealand and Australia, and then we'd come home and tour the States again. You know, it's just like
nice.
This tour cycle was just like totally relentless. And
those all came out in pretty quick succession too. I mean, it was almost like CCR style, right? Where it was almost like a record every year. Yeah.
Yeah, we were definitely on track to do. We were pushing ourselves. We were like, well, what else are we going to do? We're just going to write, record, tour, repeat, like ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And that record has a real live feel to it, and I think that's because of that circumstance.
It does, and then go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I can't. Was it Surrender the Night or that one that had this? Had this sticker about all distortions being intentional?
Oh, that was Surrender to the Night, and that was because Bettina at the label, she was worried that people were going to hear Rough Justice, which has that like
that really
explosion.
Super distorted explosion. Yeah,
she was like, people are going to think this is fucked up, and they're going to want to return it, and so she put that on the cover, and we were like. Okay.
So that was a Bettina thing because I thought it was just like a swag thing of like, yeah, that's right, bitches.
No, but we kind of liked it. We sort of rationalized allowing her to do that because on you might get a kick out of this, but on not Axis Bold as Love, Are You Experienced? Mm-hmm. The first Hendrix record, there was a sticker like that, like a disclaimer, like saying like it didn't have the same wording, but it was
something similar.
There's distortion on this record. Please be aware.
Oh,
and
Dale showed that to me. Yeah, you're right. I forget what it says.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah, but it's like it's the same. I wish I could look it up, but that's the same basic idea, which is like you can't return this. You're buying this fully aware that. There's distortions on this record.
Yeah, you bought this, sucker. You gotta deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong.
I wish I could remember that, but no. Especially for a band that you know, from a guy living in Oakland, California, you guys had something of a mysterious presence. So it just added to the mystique as far as I was concerned. And then when you hear that song, you're like, oh, they're talking about this one, okay. But like, it was sort of like, wow, what does that mean? Like, is that just like what is that like a mission statement? Like what what does that mean?
Right. I'm looking for that sticker now.
I know. I am too. It's terrible.
It's not showing up easily.
Yeah, it's on one of those. You're listening to two guys searching for shit on the internet. I think I saw it on one of those like just record nerd groups or something. Somebody had just like posted or something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't know. I might even have it. My copy might even have it on it. But anyway, anyway, that was our rationalization. It was like, well, they had it on their record. So.
Yeah, exactly. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna like find it like the second the show's over. So whatever. It's not a big deal. Future World. That's a concept record.
Yeah, that was born when we were on tour in Germany, and I remember we had a day off at in Lake Constance, which is like right at the border of, it's in southern Germany, right at the border of Switzerland and Austria. And it's one of the most beautiful places. And this very picturesque lake that's right at the foot of the Alps. And I remember going out for a meal with our friend Jonathan, who was doing our sound. And we had this long conversation, and it was just kind of like, after a few beers, we were like concocting this idea for our next record. And it just kind of went from there. And we even were writing songs on tour,
That's hard, man.
We'd go to sound check and we'd be so bored of doing the same thing over and over. Yeah, we were just
start working on new stuff.
Seb had this crazy box that he built, which contained he had a 606 Roland 606 drum machine, and he had this crazy analog drum brain, which we would trigger from the 606, and then he had all these things built into this box that made it such that we could we would just jam and sound checks, and we started writing material for that album on tour. And then we wrote a lot of the songs in my parents' basement as well. And then we booked the time in the studio before we were really done writing the record, but somehow it came together really easily and pretty quickly. And we finished tracking it the studio was in DC, and our friend Jonathan did all the engineering. And then we had met James Murphy of LCD Sound System fame, which it wasn't a band even at that point.
No, but that was Speed King, man. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And, yeah, he had definitely been playing music, but we met him he was doing sound for Six Finger Satellite, and we'd done a big U.S. tour with them, and we'd become friends with James, and we liked his whole approach and his aesthetic, and so we booked time at his studio in New York, which was also just being built. And
sounds like a running theme.
We were the first session at his studio was called Plantain, and it was in the Lower East Side, or Chelsea. It was in Chelsea, and we showed up with all our tapes, and literally it was the same deal. It was we'd sit in the control room, and they were putting the speakers in, and then we'd be like,
pardon my reach. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we put a compressor on that track? And then a guy would walk in with a compressor and put it in the rack, plug it in, and then turn it on. And then
right.
It was, I'm not even exaggerating. It was exactly like that. The paint was still drying. It was
right. It's about as fresh as you can get.
Yeah. But that record came out really well. I mean, there's things that are weird about that record that in hindsight, we wish that they'd had a few days to troubleshoot the studio, because for instance, there was one channel on their mixing board that even when the fader was all the way down, it wasn't off. And it just happened that
you get a little bleed in.
Yeah, there was leakage, and we wanted to fade. There was a track that we had recorded that we wanted to fade from 0, but we couldn't do that because that track the channel on the board was broken. It was but that's on the record. That's just how it is.
Is that on the? Is that on the? Is it Television Eyes?
No, it's on. It's on the last track on this album.
Oh yeah, you know what? And I know it because I actually recently, recently played that record, but I played it loud, and I never noticed until I played loud and until I played it in headphones. If you played a regular volume, you don't really think I'd be listening to it.
Yeah, you can hear all that shit on headphones. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, at the time it was bumming us out, but in hindsight, it's
right.
It is what it is. If we were to remix it now, I think it would just sound weird. Yeah,
people would be like, "Hey, where'd the thing go?"
Yeah.
So with an album like that, do you've got a title track on there, right? You've got a kind of a clear ethos and statement. At what point were you okay, we're doing this? This is the thing. Did you have some of the songs sort of mapped out beforehand? Did the concept feed the creativity? I mean, I know it's a ways back. I know. Sorry.
I know it's okay. I think that we were on a real roll at that point, and we had just introduced the vocoder, and that was like a really like we had a real like rush of inspiration. It was like suddenly we have another instrument in the band, and it's much easier to write songs now because we have this. It's like it was a revelation. It was like, okay,
yeah,
now we can write like not pop songs, but it's like it just became. We moved away from the whole instrumental thing. Like the Surveillance was like the real total distillation of that. And then Future World was like blowing the doors open, and suddenly there's this whole universe of music we could write.
Right. So, I mean, did you ever think of it as like, oh, this is an instrumental band, or is it more just like, oh no, these are the tools in the toolbox right now, and like we're not going to limit to that? And I bring that up because, you know, post Future World, you know, like you start introducing vocals that are not robot vocals too,
right?
You know, like Redline and stuff, and it works, and it doesn't seem like it's out of sorts. You guys were uncomfortable with it or anything along those lines,
right?
What was the thought process with that? Like, did you ever? Because I know you guys kind of all come from a rock and roll background, you know, punk rock.
Well, I don't. I think that Transium's always been a band that has. We have like two. There's like the super logical side and then the super impulsive side, and when it comes to writing music, we would never stop ourselves from trying something because we don't like to talk ourselves out of trying something just because we've decided that we're not going to do that. And like you can see that throughout our catalog, it's like kind of scattered all over the place. And so and also we're incredibly reactionary. And I think that there may have been a point between the Surveillance and Future World where it's possible that we were even reacting against
what you'd done before.
The idea people had pigeonholed us as an instrumental band. And we're like, fuck that. Who says we're an instrumental band?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's my memory. Or I think that's, I would love to hear what Nate or Seb would say, but I think that's probably
well, sure.
accurate.
And that's that's a parallax view situation. Rashomon effect, I suppose, is the better, the more esoteric and film nerdy way to describe it. But okay, so then, oh yeah. So, but with Future World, like, it's very much a concept record, like much in the style of. More man, machine, or radioactivity than Operation Mindcrime. You know, like it's.
Ooh, I like that reference. Yeah, I mean, we were obsessed with Kraftwerk, that's for sure. But we're not. Yeah, we are not afraid of like the cheesiness of prog and that, concept records. That's super prog.
Yeah, that's about as hand in hand with prog, I would say. Mm-hmm. So then Redline again comes out. I think about the year after that. You're still in that that streak of just CCR style, cranking these out. That's the one. One of the songs is like a Windows startup sound, kind of like stretched out.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's the opening track
of the first one. Yeah, First Step. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the record where anything goes. That was the whole rule.
Yeah, because there's that kind of Melvinsy sounding one. There's the Pulitzer one.
It's all over the place.
It's like a little bit of everything you guys do, and then some kind of some stuff that you hadn't done before. Because I mean, like Play in the Summer, like I mentioned, is there's no robot vocals hiding out there.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's where we unmasked ourselves and sang just naked vocals like any other band.
Yeah, hopefully.
And that again
not
was
like
another,
his taking the makeup off, but a reveal nonetheless.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. So that was that was a real creative period for us because we built our own studio in DC, and that was where we were like really using it. Like we could just go there every day and lay down whatever, and eventually we had enough material to put out a record.
Yeah, and it's a good one. It's a long one. I mean, there's a lot. They can tell there's a lot of tunes on there, you know. And it's just like it's like right at that. It's right at that ending part of. You know, I often talk about the CD era of just like how like records started getting like really long, just like ridiculously long.
Yeah, we that was the goal. We were like, okay, the time limit for a CD is 73 minutes.
Right.
we're gonna turn in 73 minutes of music. That was really like how we like decided basically like what made the cut. It was like 73 minutes.
Yeah. Well, mission
probably could have made it 60 minutes, but that's what it is. It is what it is.
It's important to have goals. Goals and challenges. Yeah. So then that harkens back to. Oh, so I'm sorry. Any other special remembrances from the Red Line time period? Obviously, we kind of danced
anything
past.
Goes. That was the real rule.
Okay. We talked about it earlier, and I kind of moved away from it. TA. That was the one that. Again, my friend pointed. Is this the same band? I was like, yeah, it's the same band, man.
Yeah, that was a departure, and that was like we were trying to challenge ourselves to make a pop record, and that's like the most demented pop record you'll ever hear. But that was like what we wanted to do at the time, and
you hadn't really done that before. I mean, it always was like even there would be like poppy songs, but there would be like, oh, it does this weird raucous thing, or like there's this bizarre other thing that happens in there, and those were just we were never really that we could never stay focused on the pop element for long enough, and there's enough weird songs on it that it kind of disrupts that pop, you know, the real pure pop record. Yeah, how do you like get to like a song like Party Station? You know, like where does that come out of? Like, does it?
That's a good question. I think that was also a point where Seb and Nate started doing a lot of writing together, and I think I've always been like leaning more towards the rock side, and they were always wanting to be more on the synth side.
Gotcha.
And I think that I recently found a bunch of demos for that album for TA where it was just Nate and Seb. And I think it was like I was going on tour with Golden and they were at home writing music for the new Trans Am record. And so a lot of the songs were actually written by Nate and Seb. And I came home and I was like, these sound cool, and I'll write some guitar to this. But I had less input in maybe like compared to other Trans Am records, that record. It
had less of raucous tendencies, maybe because of
that. Yeah. I wasn't trying to force my rock agenda on them.
The extreme rock agenda. So then, all right, then we're we're into the Bush years here at this point. I'm trying to personally place it. Liberation comes out, and that's sort of like, oh, it's the political
our
one.
Protest record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I was, and for those only listening on the podcast, I made like a face when I did that. But it is, and it was something where, and again, it's hard to contextualize this, but it was like, oh, that's a pretty Trans Am, like they made like a protest record. I was like, what? Trans Am did? Really?
Right. I know it's hard to picture us as a political band, but it was in the thick of all of the stuff that was going on, the Bush. Oh, it was like we were just in the middle of all of that in DC, and we were just so scandalized that no one else was really speaking up.
Yeah.
And so we took it upon ourselves. We were just like, well, fuck it, we're gonna make a record, a protest record, and make a stink. At least, like, whatever we can do.
Yeah,
and there were so few records that came out at that time with like Dixie Chicks and Trans Am. I don't know.
It was, I mean, Janine Garofalo was on news shows because they, like she was like the anti-war voice. And we, that's you and her surveillance. The Replicator record came out at the same time, and everyone called it like super paranoid. And then it's like, oh, like a year later, it's like, oh no, like this is Patriot Act. Like, oh, everybody actually is under surveillance. It was like, yeah, that's right. It wasn't all sci-fi, man. Like,
right. I know, and now everything's so much worse. It's kind of
it sounds adorable. Like the things that we were upset about back then. It's like, wow, really? Like that's
mind blows the mind.
Yeah, we're just an idiocracy now.
I know. Oh my god.
Actually, I would trade who for Comancho. Actually, he actually seems like would be somewhat of a decent dude. So anyway, Liberation, and that's when, and we covered the SEV thing last time, so we don't need to labor that. But that was sort of the last vestiges of the selling out argument times, which is
right.
Also hilarious to think about as people like kind of try to angle for 360 deals and all that now.
Oh yeah.
So Sex Change Ends is one after that.
Oh yeah. Return to Form.
And what's different? So that's like what 2007, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, that was a one where we recorded half of it in New Zealand, where Nate was living, and half of it in New York, where I don't know if Seb was even living there yet. I think Seb was maybe living in London at the time. But yeah, like I said, we were all living. Yeah, we were living in different places and got together. We got together after a little break and felt good to be together and making music again. And that one came together pretty easily. And we mixed it in San Francisco at Tiny Telephone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I have fond memories about making that record. That one has less of a theme, I would say.
I mean, the theme seems to be more like, here are some Trans Am songs. Is
yeah, exactly.
Not in a bad way. Just
no, I agree. I think it doesn't suffer from not having a theme, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just a Trans Am record.
Then the one after that has one of, I think, the funnier album titles. Thing.
Yes.
It makes me laugh every time I see it.
Yeah, running out of ideas.
Flogging a dead horse.
That one is definitely was a concept record because it started as a soundtrack for a science fiction movie that was never made. Really?
It kind of looks like a soundtrack. The cover art kind of looks like a soundtrack to something. Yeah. Yeah,
that was the whole idea. Our friend Jeremy Schmidt, who plays keyboards in Black Mountain, who's also a great graphic designer. He's done a lot of the Zombie album covers too, and Black Mountain album covers. But we hired him to do the artwork for that record, and he knew exactly what we were going for.
It looks like what you're going to be in for if you listen to the record. Like it's which is something to be said for that.
Dystopian future, like hellscape.
Right. Which, as it turns out, is 2020. So
soundtrack to 2020.
Yeah, except for the dystopia is much more mundane than any one of us could have realized.
Yeah.
So, in the grand tradition of the self-titled 1, 2, 3, etc., then the one after that's Volume X,
Volume 10,
which is Volume 10. Yes,
it was our 10th record, and strangely, that was a really contentious issue with our label.
Really,
and Bettina didn't want us to call it Volume 10 because she thought it was confusing, or like, why is it Volume X? And we were like,
it's Roman numerals. Prod, hello.
Well, first of all, it's a Roman numeral, and then also it's our 10th album, and also it's a tip of the hat to Sabbath.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard Volume 4.
Maybe have you heard of this record called Volume 4?
Yeah. And so in the end, we got our way because Bettina, she's always artist first, and it's their decision to make. So,
and even like the record cover, even kind of like almost was like an homage to what is it, the Who record cover?
There's that. Who's next?
Yeah, I was gonna say my favorite Who record, but I can't think of the name of it right now.
Yeah.
And at that point, if you think about the fact of the fun self-awareness aspect of it, the fact that you call it Volume 10, I think is fantastic. But I mean, of course, I guess I'm the target audience for that kind of BS. So make it that way.
Well, good. I'm glad you appreciated that. At least someone did.
Damn.
Yeah. That was fun to make.
Yeah. So did you? I mean, and it's it's a good Trans Am record. Did you feel like that one kind of just hit at the wrong time, or like what was the?
Well, I think it was probably like it hit at a time where we weren't that available. We're like past the point of doing like heavy touring.
Yeah, you're not going to be going out for like 4 months or something to.
No, we couldn't do that kind of tour support or to support the record. And I mean, I do think like a band that puts out that many records, even their big fans, like, I mean, I remember like there was a certain point at which I lost track of how many Melvin's records. It's like, what's this Melvin's record? It's like when a band's been around for that long.
Yeah.
You're just like, Jesus Christ.
I was actually going to cite the Melvins as well, and it's like I don't feel the least bit bad about it. It's like
I mean, and they've eclipsed us many times over because they've been around for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like a band that's been around for decades.
Yeah.
It's like there's a point at which even fans don't know about your records.
Well, and that works on multiple levels. I mean, there's at least like 3 or 4 Cosmic Psychos record. I'm like, I haven't listened to that, but I know exactly what it sounds like. Like I don't need to. It's gonna sound like the Cosmic Psychos is what it's gonna sound like. Right. It's okay. Probably doesn't have any ska tunes on it. It's gonna be songs about drinking beer. It's cool. Got it.
Well, watch out for the next Trans Am record. It's gonna be ska, all ska.
it's the ska. It's the ska breakout record.
Future ska.
Future ska. Oh boy. So then that comes up to something I was very happy when you guys named the one most recently California Hotel, because of course, like being a long-time Oakland guy, I was like, that's awesome. And of course, that is a real building, and it's anytime you travel on the 580 or even the 580 over to the 24, you see it, and it's a really notable landmark. Of course. Yeah,
and I remember when I was playing with the Once and Future Band guys at the time, and I remember when I told them about I told them the title, and they were like, I can't believe that's been sitting in everyone's face for so long, and no one's used that.
Every band in the Bay Area has seen that building and that sign like a million times, and and you guys picked it up, and I was like, I remember thinking like, good for them. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. It makes perfect sense for Trans Am.
Well, then, and you also get to, that little tongue-in-cheek Eagles reference as well, which is nice. Like that.
Yeah, we've unashamed Eagles fans. That's for sure.
So tell me about California Hotel then, and that's about. I can't remember. I think that one had not come out when we talked last, but it was like pretty close to coming out. I can't remember exactly.
Maybe that one.
We were working on it, I think, if I remember.
Yeah, we that one again. It was like we're all living in different places, but getting together occasionally. We did that one at El Studio, and we actually didn't. We thought it was just going to come out as an EP, but then Thrill Jockey decided to call it an LP, so it's our shortest LP. But
I guess it is kind of short, especially compared to like Redline.
Well, yeah, for sure.
But hey, there's a lot of stuff.
I know. I do like short records, like Van Halen 1984 and Kraftwerk. Computer World are both under a half an hour. Slayer, Rain and Blood also under half.
Then you can just play it again, no problem.
Yeah. So that one I thought came together really easily, and really that was a fun record to make, and that's the last one we've made. we've got some stuff in the pipeline, but it's not moving very quickly. So,
well, again, when we get to the point of worrying about Trans Am discographies, I think we'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, we're going to be partying pretty hard.
Right, exactly. So then I feel like I'd be remiss to let you go without talking a little more about Terry Gross, because as a Bay Area person for most of my adult life, I think it's an awesome confluence of like, oh, I would not necessarily think of those three dudes playing together, but that's really cool.
It started as a recording project. Because Donnie and I opened the studio, and then Phil started booking sessions there. Actually, Donnie was playing with Phil in a band called Peace Creep.
Oh, right. With
Christian.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Christian
Triclops and Bottles and Skulls and all that. Yeah.
Yep. And they broke up, and Donnie and Phil. It wasn't even like they approached me to start playing in their band, but we started jamming at El Studio as literally it was like a recording project. Like, let's just get together and set up some mics and test this out.
See what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And we did that for like a year. We would just get together regularly and we'd record everything because we were doing it playing in a studio. And then eventually over time it started to coalesce, and we were like, okay, this is actually becoming something more than just this jam band. And we started talking about, hey, well, maybe we should book a show. Hey, maybe we should have a name. and actually the name part was really funny because we've compiled a list of names. Like, everyone would just like throw these names on this. We had a Google Doc, and no one could ever agree. We were like, never come to an agreement. And what we did was we booked a weekend where we went up to our friend's house in Point Arena, and we had like a vision quest. And we were like, we're not leaving his house until we agreed on a name. And Terry Gross was one of the only names, if not the only name, that we all agreed on.
It's a pretty great band name. I mean, like, that's pretty awesome, I gotta say. Like, it's
yeah.
And that's another one I'm like, oh, that's good. How come nobody else thought of that before them? That's
right. And it goes over anyone who lives outside of the United States has no idea. It totally goes over their heads. They're like, okay.
Yeah, and that's something where that's okay. It's it's for the people that it's for. It's a cool band. I got the Valley King record.
Oh, good.
And I really enjoyed it. I'm eager to hear more from that band, and whatever you guys got coming up. That's something that you certainly have a home here to talk about. Hint, hint. And
yeah, well, when it does come out, we should plan something maybe with Becker.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, it'd be great to have Phil on. He's that's another guy that he's done a lot of cool shit, and like most people wouldn't necessarily know, but like he's done a lot of cool.
Oh
shit.
Yeah, he's an incredibly good recording engineer.
Phil, it's been great having you on. Thanks so much for coming back. Really appreciate you. Whenever I have folks on these days, so developed, about 4 years ago, something I always ask people as the last question, why do you do what you do?
I just love making music. I don't know what else to say. It keeps me happy. It keeps me sane.
That's as good a question as any. Phil, thanks so much for your time, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Conan. Nice to see you.
Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. All the best.
And there he goes. Mr. Phil Becker. Oh, Phil Manley. Jesus Christ. I mean, we were just talking about Phil Becker. That's why it was on my mind. Yeah. Trans Am, baby. Let's listen to a song. Here's some Future World for you. Trans Am. Television Eyes. That's a little song called Television Eyes for y'all. Yeah. This is a, it's been a good time. That's on the Future World record. You can get that here and now because it is the future. So you can get the Future World record. So that's a lucky thing that it's the future now. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to get that record. Turns out it's only available in the future. All of those things are lies. Anyway, hey. That's it. That's the show. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Phil Manley, for coming on once more. It's been far too long. Love that dude. There's a bunch of stuff we didn't even get into, but we got into a lot of stuff, and I feel pretty good about it. Hope you enjoyed it as well.
Are we going?
You've been listening to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal, and we thank you for it. This show airs on Radio Nope. RadioNope.com. Say yes to Nope.
Test. Can you hear me now?
Music on, Music Ops coming up. RadioNeutron.com for the archives. The name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you very much for listening to it. This show airs on RadioNope.com. Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific.
Signing off, Mr. and Mrs. America, all ships at sea.
Podcast at RadioNeutron.com or ProtonicReversal.com.
Sound of my voice.
Or wherever you find your podcasts. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
If you want to get the episodes sooner, Patreon.com/Protonic Reversal.
Ionize the air.
$1 a month gets you everything you need. The average cost is like 4 cents or something along those lines, but
This moon turns sound into electricity.
but the show's always free. Thanks for liking the shows and spreading the word out and all that stuff.
Out on Route 128.
Stay safe out there. Raise your fist up,
You got my radio on.
but take it easy.
Can you hear me now? 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 See in the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now?